Think for a second about how we usually picture a human life. We almost always draw it as this straight, flat line, right? A simple timeline just stubbornly moving from left to right from the moment of birth to the very end. But in this explainer, we're going to fundamentally shift how you view your life's journey. We're ditching that basic timeline. Instead, we're diving into the incredibly complex physical topology of your relationships. We're going to look at your life not as a line, but as a living, breathing bundle of wires.
So, life begins as a single strand. Picture a dark, timeless space where a single, glowing white filament appears the exact moment you're born. It's fragile, it's completely unaware, and it has absolutely no direction yet. But, it doesn't stay that way for long. Almost immediately, two larger, warm-colored cables, which represent our parents or early caregivers, emerge from the darkness and gently intertwine with that fragile little filament. And just like that, the bundle has begun to form. As time accelerates through childhood into those education years and maybe into a PhD, postdoc, or early career, this bundle gets incredibly busy. Colorful, thin wires are constantly joining and leaving our main trajectory. These are your friends from elementary school, influential teachers, neighbors, maybe international colleagues or academic mentors later down the road. Some of these wires flash brilliantly and leave almost instantly, while others stay intertwined with us for years. People arrive quietly, and honestly, very few of us realize in the moment that they're already actively shaping who we're going to become. Now, here is absolutely the core concept of all this. Leaving people doesn't erase them. It's so easy to think that when an old school friend fades from your daily routine, their wire just snaps off, floats away, and disappears forever. But we've got to recognize that every single meaningful connection we make during those formative years leaves a permanent strand inside us. Even when the person physically moves on or the whole context of the relationship changes, their influence stays. It slowly and steadily thickens our main, central cable. And then there are those relationships that don't just add a tiny parallel wire. No, they reroute the entire bundle. When we form a family, have children, or meet a lifelong partner, these deeply warm cables don't just passively join the ride. They wrap completely around the core. They create this immense gravitational pull, and they permanently bend your life's trajectory. You aren't just traveling alongside them anymore. Your actual path is fundamentally altered by their presence. Section 1. Properties of connection. The complex physics of relationships.
As we enter the intense, complex period of our adult careers and personal lives, we start to realize these connecting wires have specific mechanical properties. Think of it like physics. Every single relationship, whether it's transactional, temporary, or profoundly deep, relies on 5 crucial elements. First up is thickness, which is our emotional investment. Think of the difference between your deep, thick friendships and a thin, temporary acquaintance at the office. Next is color. This is the nature of the relationship, like the distinct hue of a mentor, a fierce rival, or a family member. Then we have elasticity, and this is a big one. It's the ability to absorb conflict and adapt. Basically, can this relationship stretch and snap back to normal after a big argument, or is it just going to break? Conductivity measures energy flow. We all know people who energize us and others who drain us completely, even if their wires are right next to our core. And finally, insulation. Healthy relationships have insulation. This means having boundaries that protect your emotional core from absorbing every single emotional fluctuation the other person has.
So, how do we actually behave while managing the tension of all these crazy connections? Well, if you adopt the steel rod approach and remain completely rigid, every little change transmits maximum stress, and eventually, the rod fractures right under the pressure. People often mistake this rigidity for having strong principles, but usually it's really just an inability to adapt. On the completely opposite extreme, we have cooked spaghetti. If you're completely flexible, you bend to literally everything. That eventually means you have zero direction and no identity at all. People mistake that for kindness, but it's often just blind people-pleasing. We absolutely must avoid both of these extremes to survive the wild complexity of adulthood.
So what's the middle ground here? Nature actually gives us the perfect model, the banyan tree. To truly thrive, we should mimic this magnificent tree. Your principles, things like integrity, honesty, compassion, those should be very rigid, like the tree's trunk. They rarely bend. But your opinions on things like your career trajectory or new technology, those are like branches. They need to be flexible and evolve over time. Your preferences, like hobbies or your morning routine, are the leaves, highly flexible, capable of changing constantly without hurting the tree. And your emotions, those are completely fluid. Just let them pass like the wind.
Wisdom isn't about being universally rigid or universally flexible, it's knowing exactly what principles must never bend and what preferences require elastic deformation. Moving on to Section 2, the hidden truth. What remains when the cables fade? As we get older, the pacing of life inevitably slows down. We all reach a point where many vibrant professional and personal cables quietly begin to fade away. Retirement removes a massive set of wires, friendships might naturally thin out because of distance, and eventually loved ones pass on. Which brings us to a really deeply personal question we all have to face at some point. What happens when people leave? How do we survive the disappearance of these vital connections, these massive projects, and the people we love when they finally detach from our bundle? The answer actually lies in your character. By definition, character is the central core, continually rebuilt by the thousands of filaments left behind by every departed relationship, joy, betrayal, and success. The big secret here is that the central cable isn't actually you in a fleeting physical sense. It is your character. This perfectly explains why some people can emerge from devastating losses with incredible stability. Yes, they lost external wires, jobs, friends, physical abilities, but their core, that remained beautifully intact. Because here is the thing. People leave. Their influence rarely does. By the time we reach old age and gather wisdom, our central character cable is vastly thicker and stronger than that fragile, thin white strand we started with at birth. And why is that? Because it's composed entirely of what remained after everyone who shaped us passed through. Every mentor, every rival, every child, every friend, they didn't just walk alongside you on a timeline. They twisted a permanent piece of themselves right into the very fiber of who you are today. Finally, Section 3, the Universal Network. A shift in perspective. Throughout this whole explainer, we've been looking at this bundle strictly from your point of view, assuming you are the central cable. But if we pull the camera way back from this individual story, there is a breathtaking twist. Imagine zooming out to see millions of other bundles touching, separating, merging, and crossing in the dark. In that vast, universal network, you suddenly realize something profound. You are simultaneously your daughter's father, your partner's spouse, your student's mentor, your parent's child, your colleague's collaborator, and your friend's companion. While you spent your whole life thinking you were the massive central cable that everything else attached to, you're actually just one brilliant thin strand weaving through and permanently shaping hundreds of other people's core cables. You are part of their character now, exactly as they are part of yours. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to reflect on this final thought. We spend our lives believing we are collecting people. Perhaps we are really collecting pieces of ourselves. Every single connection you make today is actively weaving the core of who you will be tomorrow. So look around at the people in your life right now. Whose bundle are you rerouting, and what kind of strand will they leave inside of you?